Hi biology students, this is Mrs. Miller again, and we're just going to wrap up our last sections of notes going on with the ecology unit. So today we're on section 5, impact on ecosystems. First thing that we need to talk about with our ecosystems is humans, obviously. So when we first had human population being tracked, what we noticed is that population was growing very, very slowly. So here's a graph. We have 10,000 BC all the way up to 2,000. And we had very little in terms of growth. And again, this is billions of people. So we were well under 1 billion people at this point. The reason why was that food was really scarce. We had incurable diseases were really common. Infants died a lot, and we also had really, really low life expectancies overall. So when we compare 1930 to 2010, in 1930, a man was expected to live for 59.7 years versus 2010, 76.5. So you can see, even with the females, there's a huge jump. If you look at this picture, we can see some pretty interesting things. One is agriculture begins here. Now we can kind of see an increase, again, very, very tiny, but we're seeing a little increase in population. Now plowing and irrigation has been developed, okay? We're seeing another little increase. See a bigger increase here, and then boom, all of a sudden we see a drop. The reason why there was a drop was that bubonic plague that hit. So that took out a huge chunk of individuals, and that population dropped. Then we got much better with vaccines. We got much better with industry. And all of a sudden we have the Industrial Revolution, and now that population is growing. The world population is at about 7.7 billion people now. So we can see that we've come quite a long ways. Again, about 500 years ago, the population really started to grow. And there was a reason why. It's because we fixed a lot of the problems that we were working with before. One is the world's food supply became much more reliable. We got better at industry. We understood how farming took place. We had bigger farming operations, and we provided more food. Agriculture and industry life was made easier and safer, so we had machinery that was created that allowed us to do things faster. We revolutionized the way that food could be shipped, so food could now go from one location to a location very far away. It wasn't just you were relying on what you had at your specific home. We also had improved sanitation, medication, and advances in healthcare. So people were cleaner, we had better medicines, we had vaccines, and that really helped there. And then we still had birth rates were still remaining relatively high. And the result of that is that exponential growth we're seeing. So we see a little bit of growth here, a little dip because of the plague, and then our numbers since then have just shot up based on our improvements to our day-to-day life. As we learned in a previous section, at some point we cannot continue to grow exponentially. When will it slow down, and what factors will cause it to slow down? Well, scientists predict that war, famine, or a disease would at some point limit the population growth. So maybe there would be a disease that kills off large amounts of people. Maybe there was droughts that didn't allow for certain foods to be available to certain areas, or war. Any of those are good ideas, but eventually we have to reach that carrying capacity, or that max amount of people who can live in a world. In the meantime, we're using many resources very quickly, but at some point we're going to reach that carrying capacity. And many scientists believe that that carrying capacity is going to be between 9 or 10 billion people, which we're going to get pretty close to at some point here. As our population continues to get larger and larger, we need to realize that we are taking much more from our environment than we're putting back. So humans have a huge impact on their environment. Humans, as we know, is the most dominant species on the planet, and therefore we have the largest impact on that environment, and that can be both good or very bad. And right now we're going to be focusing on those ways that humans negatively impact the environment. A few of these things are overpopulation, deforestation, air pollution, overfishing, plastic pollution, poaching and overhunting, and then of course global warming. The first thing I want to talk about with you guys is overpopulation. As I mentioned previously, there are about 7.7 billion people living on Earth today. That is a lot of hungry people who need to be fed. So all these people require resources to live: food, shelter, water. All of those are essential needs of life, and at some point we won't have enough of those resources available. As I had also previously mentioned, most scientists believe that Earth can only sustain 9 to 10 billion people, so we are quickly approaching that carrying capacity, and at some point we can't support that many individuals on this Earth. So after that, we run out of resources. What do we do then? We won't have enough clean water, we won't have enough food, and we won't have enough other resources to keep everyone alive, and that's going to mean that many people are not going to be able to survive once we hit that overshoot like we had seen in a previous unit. So overpopulation can be devastating for that area. Just like in an area that gets overpopulated in nature, we see that those animals die off. Well, the same thing at some point would have to happen with humans. A second negative impact that humans have on the environment is deforestation. So humans cause deforestation when they cut down forests to gain more resources and space to house themselves. One thing that we see is resources. Obviously, in order to build houses, we need resources like wood to build. So what we do is some people choose to deforest the area to get those resources that they need in order to build those shelters. We also need space. You can't build a house in the middle of this mess, so we start to clear out areas and we don't replant that. Oftentimes, this is because we also need more room for agriculture because we need to feed more and more people. So as we cut down these trees, now we plow up this earth and we use it to grow more food. Deforestation can lead to there being less trees on the earth, so that also means less carbon dioxide is being taken out of the atmosphere. That's a really negative impact. So when more of that CO2 is still out in the atmosphere, that means less of that heat is leaving our atmosphere, and that's where we are starting to see climate change. Deforestation can also lead to habitat loss for animals and can lead to some animals dying out or being in too close of contact with animals. With humans. As these poor animals are having, let's say, the tropical rainforest go away, now they don't have as many areas to hide and to be away, so they're either finding a new place or they're dying. Air pollution is one of the number one factors that we're going to see with how people negatively influence our ecosystems. So as humans have more needs, we need industry to provide for those needs. We need more things in our life. As we have these needs, it's going to be burning fossil fuels, whether it's for cars or whether it's for industry. And as more of these things are going out in the atmosphere, we're getting pollution, which includes smog and unclean water. So smog is a buildup in larger cities that can make it dangerous for people to breathe the air. So here is a bigger city, and you can see it kind of looks hazy. Well, that haze isn't because of like water vapor. It is because there is so much pollution in the air, and people can get really sick from that. In really large cities, sometimes people have gone and tested where they've worn a white t-shirt and walked around outside all day, and by the end of the day that shirt turns more of like a gray color because all those pollutants have attached itself to the shirt. Another thing it can lead to is acid rain, ocean acidification, and garbage in all ecosystems. So ocean acidification can lead to the death of coral reefs because the pH has changed a little bit in that area, and a little change is a big difference for many organisms in the ocean. Overfishing is another big area where humans have impacted their environments negatively. We need food, and a great place to get food, of course, is the ocean. A lot of people really love fish, so they go in search of it. And what happens is then we get these mass fishing operations that use nets like this, and they pull in hundreds of thousands of fish in a day. And many species are considered to be in that high demand, or people want those specific types of fish. So they're fished to the point where only a few are left in the habitat. Halibut is a good example. Herring, cod, and many species of sharks have fallen victim to overfishing to the point where some of those are becoming very limited in the ecosystem. And what happens is this changes the entire ecosystem by taking away one link in a food chain. Now that changes who the predators and prey are in that specific ecosystem and can really toss it into chaos. Plastics and plastic pollution is one of the worst things that humans have done as well. So, plastic pollution is the accumulation of plastic objects and particles, including plastic objects, bags, microbeads, plastic bags, in the Earth's environment that negatively affect wildlife habitat, and humans. So we know that plastics have absolutely flooded the ocean and gotten to almost every single ecosystem imaginable. Here we see ocean, and then we have a whale shark here. The whale shark is just about to eat a plastic bag, and you can see above it we have all of this garbage just hanging out. Many organisms think that that is a type of fish, or it looks almost like a jellyfish, so they're ingesting it, and sometimes it's getting caught inside of them and it's killing them. Here we have a beach, and you can see just how much garbage is all over that beach, and it's completely unsanitary. Many animals have been found to ingest them, or they're killed by plastics that are man-made. I've seen a video of a poor turtle that got a straw stuck up one of its nostrils and couldn't breathe, or we have turtles who get caught in like soda can plastic, like that keeps all the sodas together, and it can be devastating to populations. And we know that plastics take 1,000 years or more to decompose, so they're going to be around for a very, very, very long time. It's much better to use multi-use devices like Nalgene bottles, things like that. Poaching and overhunting is also very bad. So poaching, of course, is the illegal hunting or capturing of wild animals that are being protected. So a good one is tigers. Tigers are often killed because of their beautiful, unique coats. So they're made into rugs and things like that, even though there are very few of them that are actually surviving out in the wild and they are protected. Rhinos and elephants are other ones that are being poached a lot because of their horns and their tusks, so they contain ivory. So some groups are trying to prevent that, and they'll tranquilize a rhino and cut off its horn so that someone else doesn't kill it to do that, because what poachers do is they'll kill that rhino or that elephant and they'll just take the tusk, or they'll just take the horn and leave the rest of the body there to rot, which is completely unethical. These animals usually are very few in the wild, especially the rhinos and the tigers, and it can be devastating to that population. Overhunting is another activity that results in serious reduction of species, population, or harm to wildlife. So these animals may not be illegal to hunt, but some people hunt them too much. Buffalo, for example, were hunted to near extinction, so thankfully that population has come back up once that was regulated. The dodo bird and the passenger pigeon both became extinct because of overhunting of that specific animal. So if we take too many of those animals, that population can't recover. So with many of these things, we're also leading back to global warming and climate change. We know that human activities have had the greatest impact on greenhouse gases in history, which leads to climate change that we talked about in our previous section of notes. We are just pumping carbon dioxide into our atmospheres with cars, factories, burning fossil fuels. We do this so often. Luckily for us, oceans and the land that make up our world absorb some of that carbon dioxide that would otherwise be released to our atmosphere, but it's still too much. So we do see a cycle of carbon every year. In fall and winter, we see more because there are no more plants that are taking up that carbon dioxide from our atmosphere. We need to prevent this climate change. We know what the causes are, so that allows us to develop some solutions to help us, because remember, there is no planet B. We cannot go somewhere else at this point. So we could have humans need to reduce their energy use. So simply turning off lights, turning off the water when you're not using them helps. Switching to a cleaner alternative energy source, solar, wind, geothermal, even having energy efficient appliances in your home, perfect. Increasing fuel efficiency on vehicles, buildings, and power plants. So there's a big push to get electric cars versus our gas guzzlers and things like that that really have a lot of carbon dioxide that go into the atmosphere. Plant more trees, because the more trees we have, the more carbon dioxide comes from the atmosphere. Utilizing public transportation or green transportation like bikes. There are ways of fixing this. So what we're going to ask you guys to do is you're going to be researching one of these topics, and you're going to be explaining how this impacts our ecosystems. If you guys have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, have a great day.